Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Gauranita, Jaya Gauranita, Jaya Gauranita, Jaya Gauranita, Gauranita, Jaya Gauranita, Jaya Gauranita, Jaya Gauranita, Jaya Radha Govardhana Radha Govardhana Shri Radhe. Jaya Krishna Balaram, Jaya Giri Govardhan, Jaya Krishna Balaram, Jaya Giri Govardhan. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 5, Text 3. The chapter is called Cause of All Causes, Text 3. Please repeat. Sarvam hi etad bhavan veda Bhuta bhavya bhavat prabhu Karamalakad vat vishvam Vignana vasitam tava Sarvam yetad bhavan veda Bhuta bhavya bhavat prabhu Karamalaka vat vishvam Vignana vasitam tava Sarvam, all and everything. He, certainly. Etat, this. Bhavan, your good self. Veda, no. Bhuta, all that is created or born. Bhavya, all that will be created or born. Bhavat, all that is being created. Prabhu, you, the master of everything. Kara amala kavat, just like a walnut within your grip. Vishwam, the universe. Vijnana avashitam, within your knowledge, scientifically. Tava, your. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. My dear Father, all this is known to you scientifically, because whatever was created in the past, whatever will be created in the future, or whatever is being created at present, as well as everything within the universe, is within your grip, just like a walnut. Please repeat. My dear Father, all this is known to you scientifically, because whatever was created in the past, whatever will be created in the future, or whatever is being created at present, as well as everything within the universe, is within your grip, just like a walnut. Purport. Brahma is the direct creator of the manifested universe and everything within the universe. He therefore knows what happened in the past, what will happen in the future, and what is happening at present. Three principal items, namely the living being, the phenomenal world, and the controller, are all in continuous action, past, present, and future. And the direct manager is supposed to know everything of such actions and reactions. As one knows about the walnut within the grip of one's palm, the direct manufacturer of a particular thing is supposed to know how he learned the art of manufacturing, where he got the ingredients, how he set it up, and how the products in the manufacturing process are being turned out. Because Brahma is the firstborn living being, naturally he is supposed to know everything about creative functions. The verse again. My dear Father, all this is known to you scientifically, because whatever was created in the past, whatever will be created in the future, or whatever is being created at present, as well as everything within the universe, is within your grip, just like a walnut. Thank you, Srila Prabhupada. The chapter is called Cause of All Causes. In the Brahma Samhita, Lord Brahma himself addresses Krishna, Vishwaraha Paramaha Krishnaha, Sat Chet Ananta Vigraha, Anadir Adir Govindaha, Sarva Karana Karanam. Sarva Karana Karanam means the cause of all causes. There is always an ultimate cause. There may be instruments within that cause. Just like in the case of Lord Brahma, who was the firstborn living entity. He had a vision of Lord Narayan through his transcendental meditation, and Krishna himself, the Supreme Personality, the ultimate cause of all causes. He empowered him to be the first, I would say, engineer of this cosmic manifestation. Just like in ordinary engineering, there is a particular design. There's a conceptual design, and then as a manifestation of design, every detail is designed carefully. Nothing can go wrong. It has to be a high level of precision. just like in construction engineering. Everything has to be carefully decided to proportions, ratios, geophysical factors, engineering factors, to ensure that the structure or building, or in a larger complex, particularly a city or town planning, fits into the criteria of not only the concept but also the actual physical factors, functionality, safety, the purpose, everything has to be there. And obviously highly trained, qualified engineers, a team work together to make sure that everything carried out properly. Similarly, in this universe there are personalities who take charge or responsibility for certain functions, and Lord Brahma is the first one. He is the Mahapita, the grandfather of this universe. Basically, he masterminded under the direction of the ultimate cause, just like he himself states, Sarva Karana Karana. Krishna is the ultimate cause. So obviously he is being empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna himself. A design cannot be whimsical, it has to be under direction. Just like there's so many directions, even in ordinary architecture, building codes, not to speak of advanced level of architecture, like the Vedic way, the Vastu, sacred architecture. There's so many guiding principles. Even Shastras explain very clearly how to design and manifest such temple complexes or villages or towns. And for example, in the Vedas, there are certain sections, they supplementing Vedas, although there are some architectural description in Rig Veda, but there are particular Shastras who complement, and they're basically revealed by great architects like Vishwakarma, Mayandanava. There's a very famous one, Vishwakarma Prakash. And Vishwakarma himself, who was expert in sacred architecture, Vedic architecture, he was a great architect, Stapati master of the Devas, including Indra Dev. And he also constructed many prominent temples in this earthly planet. We all know Dwaraka city. There's a beautiful description of Dwaraka city, how Vishwakarma designed in certain Puranas, explained very nicely. And also Mayandanava, who was the architect of the Asuras, very highly trained, especially mystical arts. So they were very, very knowledgeable and very carefully designing things. So similarly, Lord Brahma had a great responsibility, extremely. He had to manifest Krishna's vision. Krishna had the original concept, obviously. He is the cause of all causes. And Lord Brahma, being a great devotee, a great empowered personality, and he's basically the head of our sampradaya. So obviously Lord Brahma received all the knowledge, all the potencies being empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he carefully designed this material cosmic manifestation, what we see here. And of course, ultimately, Krishna does everything through his potencies, through his empowered agencies, the great demigods taking certain positions and responsibilities for the creation of this manifested world. So an intelligent person, as Srila Prabhupada explained in previous purports, wants to know the origin of this creation. Who has created? What is this phenomenal world, the living entities? What is the future? What is the purpose? So obviously there's a purpose here. There's an objective of Krishna. Krishna sees why this has to be manifested. And we can see that unless someone has enlightened knowledge by the mercy of the Supreme and his representatives, one cannot have a perfect insight about the creation. That is why we can see the common trend of scientists. They're building theories. And the theories are incomplete. They go on experimental knowledge, ascending knowledge, which cannot come to a proper conclusion. Actually, no one can understand Krishna in truth unless he actually surrenders to him. He is not willing and he is not prepared to reveal himself to such inimical or doubtful or skeptical personalities like the atheistic scientists. So he remains mysticism for them. Only a bhakta, only a devotee who has sincere inquiry from the heart, not just intellectual exercise or intellectual debates, but rather seeking the truth, seeking solutions, understanding the true nature of this world, how it has created. Just like Narada Muni here, who was the disciple of Lord Brahmaji, naturally inquiring how this manifested world created, how it is being created, and how it will manifest in the future. So Brahmaji explains the system in this chapter very nicely. And we can see if you study Brahma Samhita, which is a classic Vaishnava study, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu discovered the verses of Brahma Samhita, and we recite the Brahma Samhita because Brahma Samhita explains systematically, gradually to the highest levels of devotion. But Lord Brahma starts with addressing Krishna as the Parama Ishvara, the supreme controller, the cause of all causes, Sarva Karana Karana. And from there we can understand that everything after him being empowered by the Supreme personally. Nothing happens accidentally, and nothing happens whimsically. Everything is designed with the utmost precision. Look at our cosmic environment. Everything is happening in the utmost precision. Planets rotating in a certain way, in exact path, slight deviation from the path cause havoc in this cosmic environment. Therefore, everything is working according to the ultimate plan of Krishna, the supreme architect. He's the ultimate architect, and anyone else is being empowered by him. Therefore, this chapter addresses the creator, the ultimate creator, and also the great devotees who are his powerful instruments in this creation. And then of course after Brahmaji there are many other department heads who have a function maintaining, sustaining this universe. And there are also great personalities who take part in his lila, manifested pastimes. And as we study Brahma Samhita, then we can understand how actually culminates in a beautiful environment of Vrindavan. Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. Very beautiful, systematic. And Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj wrote a commentary on Brahma Samhita, and Srila Prabhupada authorized it for us too, so we can study the Brahma Samhita translated by Bhaktisiddhanta. Of course, his language is very eloquent, very advanced language, very beautiful examples and metaphors. But if we read these and study these verses by Lord Brahmaji, he has the vision of the entire cosmic manifestation being empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he also understands the purpose of this and the causes. So there's a very beautiful chapter coming on as we read later verses, the cause of all causes. And Brahmaji's purpose is not just to enlighten his disciples like Naradaji, and of course it comes down to our spiritual teachers, but also direct them to the ultimate goal of life, which is again Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. On the other hand, the atheistic scientists they prefer creating theories, and some may be a bit closer to the truth, some may not. At best, they may come to a conclusion of an impersonal manifestation. They cannot understand or perceive, at least they cannot perceive, that there is a divine personality, a supreme personality behind this creation. You see, even in physics, we can see, we have categories called classical physics, which talks about cause and effect. Albert Einstein explained cause and effect very clearly. He has many mathematical formulas explains, but ultimately he was also perplexed. He realized there's much more to it. At least he was a sincere person who wanted to know the actual cause. Therefore, he was actually a good scientist. Srila Prabhupada acknowledged him. He was actually a sincere person. He was trying to understand the brain of Krishna, how he created this unlimited phenomena of creation. This is a scientist, a real scientist. The true scientists are fascinated. And on the other hand, atheistic scientists who do not accept a descending process, who rather, depending on the experimental knowledge, they're bound to come to a wrong conclusion or incomplete conclusion. On the other hand, there are some scientists, not that I give too much credit to modern science, but there are some intelligent scientists who are a bit more daring. They're willing to go a bit further. They're not satisfied with the impersonal or atheistic conclusions or theories. They want to have solid evidences, some kind of substance in their scientific claims. And some actually moving towards a God-conscious understanding. At least they're honest enough to say there's a great possibility that there is an intelligent designer. There was actually a meeting in San Francisco. Some of the prominent scientists in the late 90s who were open to discuss the possibility of an intelligent design. And also they were discussing the Darwin theory. And obviously they had doubts of modern scientific conclusions. And many of these scientists were actually very highly qualified PhD physicists, mathematicians, cosmological physicists, geophysicists, quantum physicists, and they had a very interesting meeting, and they were discussing more on the level of science. And they weren't speaking about religious or spiritual teachings, but they were all pointing towards an intelligent design. They all realized through their presentations, they had their presentations, and their conclusions pointing towards almost with certainty that there's an intelligent design, and nothing happens accidentally or whimsically, and there's a designer behind it. So when you say design, there has to be a designer. Just like why this chapter called Cause of All Causes, because actually there's a cause, there's a design and designer. And of course, as devotees, as students of Vaishnava Siddhanta, we understand the cause of all causes is Krishna himself, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he's got his channels, he empowers personalities, and that's how this creation takes place. Just like there's in the government, there are certain department heads, and they're being empowered by the law, so they can, the whole society can function and be productive. And so you can see that Krishna's creation is perfectly arranged. He is the ultimate designer, intelligent designer. So many of these scientists in the meeting, which was actually a volunteer project, and they weren't involving any other government or corporation representatives, mainly highly intelligent scientists who had doubts about the Darwin and Darwin theory, evolution theories, and the origin of this universe and the cosmic manifestation. So they were discussing, and they all had a very intelligent presentations, even to the molecular structure, biological, realizing that actually nothing happens accidentally. There's a cause for everything. And we can see that in even ordinary understanding of physics, that there's a cause and effect. So ultimately Krishna is the cause of all causes. So they were pointing with their presentation that there is an intelligent design and designer. So we can see intelligent persons who are open-minded, and they're willing to study it in a mechanistic science, either through observation, through calculations, through mathematical concepts, formulas. They come to a conclusion that nothing is accidental. There is a designer. Then, of course, the majority of the scientists, for whatever reasons, either they're trying to satisfy some agenda or corporation or governmental expectations, they're generally catering for the whims of modern civilization. They're creating technologies which are not necessarily good for us. There's a big split among scientists also. There are some good ones who actually willing to go deeper and understand that there's deeper causes here, not just ordinary physical laws, cause and effect. Just like Srila Prabhupada says in the previous verse in his purport, that an intelligent person seeks to know the way creation takes place, the living entities, the creator, the phenomenal world, and the reasons behind it, why we are here, why we have this three-dimensional experience. That is because Krishna had a plan for us, for his living entities. And this is the whole philosophy of Krishna consciousness being revealed by the Lord himself in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna speaks very systematically, very clearly. If you study Bhagavad Gita, it is a very deep transcendental topic, but also gives us the fundamental understanding who we are, the purpose of life, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead is. So it's a very clear, systematic revelation. And of course the Bhagavatam takes it in much more detail. And all the other Puranas, Padma Purana, Matsya Purana, the Sattvic section of the Puranas, because there are 18 Puranas, and each guna, Rajaguna, Tamaguna, Sattva-guna has 6 Puranas. So obviously the Sattvic section, Puranas, are complementing to the Supreme Purana, the Bhagavat Purana, Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhagavat Purana is the ultimate conclusion. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was a great preacher of Bhagavat Purana, Srimad Bhagavatam, because he's giving us a very clear, systematic understanding, not only the purpose of the creation, but Krishna's activities, Krishna's our relationship with Krishna. And the Bhagavat Purana brings so many examples of great devotees and their dealings with Krishna. And it gradually raises our consciousness to a higher level, to the 10th canto, where we actually getting very confidential pastimes. But first we go gradually. Bhagavad Gita, we understand the science, we understand the basics, then we're building our knowledge gradually up. In the association of devotees, under the guidance of a competent spiritual master, a bona fide spiritual master, who is being authorized and sanctioned by his spiritual master. So we're coming down to the present day, where we can humbly receive knowledge from Srila Prabhupada's books and the Vaishnavas and our current spiritual masters, who sincerely, honestly presenting Vaishnava Siddhanta without any personal motivation or agenda. In modern so-called philosophies, there's always some agenda, some interpretation. Even if you have some sort of concrete achievement, let's say scientific achievement, people like to take credit for themselves, take a Nobel Prize or take this, take that. But a devotee is not like that. Devotee is just simply want to be an instrument in the cause of Krishna. Just like Lord Brahmaji, he surrendered himself. Obviously, the firstborn living entity was being empowered for the particular purpose, and he was a perfect instrument for the creation. Similarly, in our humble case, as we surrender to Krishna, the more we become his instruments in his divine plan, whether it's a preaching cause or whatever Krishna actually wants us to do, and that is revealed to us through the guru, through the teacher. So if you really want to know how to function in Krishna consciousness, please consult a spiritual master. You can have a shiksha, a guiding guru, a mentor, and you can also, ultimately we should take shelter of a diksha teacher who can give us very particular guidelines. And that way we know, we have clarity. Okay, this is the path, this is the service, this is very pleasing to my spiritual master. So let me do it. Let me surrender to that. So everything is individualized, and overall there is a purpose for this universe. But also Krishna has a plan for individual souls also, how we can actually return. He's anxious to help us. We just have to be willing. We have to be sincere, and he will help us. He gives us the intelligence and the knowledge, of course. And coming to Krishna consciousness, naturally we are very fortunate, and we have the opportunity to understand the simple truths of Krishna consciousness, why we are here, why we are in the material world. For devotee, things become very simple, although very complex. The philosophy is very complex, but by Krishna's help, things can become very simple and clear. He says in the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna says, I give the intelligence to those who are, even if one is not so intelligent, Krishna gives the intelligence, the sufficient intelligence, so he can come back to him. So he gives us, he empowers, he gives us knowledge, he gives us all the tools and the association of Vaishnavas. So we should be grateful, we should be ready to serve. It's a great privilege to do service to Krishna. We shouldn't be so casual about it. We should actually look for service. This is a way to express our love and gratitude to the spiritual master and Krishna himself. Of course, the sadhana bhakti is very important because that purifies our consciousness, brings our focus back to devotional service, and it's a better chance that we have the strength, the spiritual strength, to face all the challenges and push on our spiritual life, so we can actually make advancement in realization. So in that way we can also fit into the grand plan of Krishna. Like I said, nothing happens exponentially, and if you are willing, we can fit into that plan, and Krishna will be very pleased, which is the true objective of a devotee, to please Krishna, to please the spiritual master. And that should be our main meditation actually. How to please the spiritual master? Because we know if the spiritual master is pleased, Krishna is pleased. So it comes out to a very simple conclusion. Naradaji, in this particular purport, inquiring basically about the creation, and not only Krishna himself, but even his empowered representatives, particularly Lord Brahma in this case, has to know how the universe is designed and how it's supposed to function. He's a first creator of this universe. Just like an engineer, he knows all the details. He cannot speculate. It has to be a correct plan. But ultimately, Brahmaji gives all the credit to Krishna himself, Sarva Karana Karanam. So this short purport, but we can understand it in many different ways. It always goes back to the basics, so we can understand complexities later. So it is very important that we regularly read Bhagavad Gita, regularly. Not just reciting the slokas, but trying to understand and meditate on the verses a bit. And of course there are many lectures by Srila Prabhupada also. We can find those lectures, Bhagavad Gita. And Srila Prabhupada explains, especially in the early days, in the late 60s, early 70s, he gave a lot of good introductions to Bhagavad Gita and how to read and how to study. And especially when he introduced Krishna consciousness to the Western world, he had to appeal to the intellect and to the heart of sincere seekers. How we can present this Vaishnava Siddhanta. So Prabhupada was expert, explaining very nicely, authoritatively, and very clearly. Beautiful. Thank you, Srila Prabhupada. Any questions, comments? Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Any comments? Hare Krishna. Yes, Prabhupada.
Just near the end there, where you were saying about how Brahma has to know how things are created. And to mind what Prabhupada says in one purport of Bhagavad Gita, he says that a disciple of a bona fide spiritual master is supposed to know everything.
Yes.
Just brought some meditation up in me of late that sometimes when I'm trying to share Krishna consciousness, there's a part of me that feels like I need to pretend like I don't know. because it seems like that popular kind of philosophical inclination, like so-called philosophical inclination these days, like it's better to be ignorant. And of course, I recognize that importance of humility, but then it's almost like when people, or devotees especially, share their insights, it's like it's too much for people, too much information, too much like the universe is not so clear. Like it's not meant to be clear. And so I noticed that actually when I go along with that and I sort of pretend like I don't know, because there's so much I don't know, but in a very deep sense, but to kind of hide what Prabhupada has given me for us, it's kind of like, I don't know, to disrespect the spiritual master in a way, like to pretend like I don't know is to say like the spiritual master hasn't actually given me.
Actually,
So how to therefore preach, share Krishna consciousness without coming across, how to deal with that hurdle of not wanting to seem like a know-it-all, but knowing that what my spiritual master has given me is the truth.
Yeah, actually I was preaching to one guest the other day and he was giving a lot of credit to us, especially to me. I was just kind of giving attention, very intelligent person, and he said, "Oh, you seem to know everything," but in a nice way. He wasn't sarcastic. He just, because I answered his questions, and I said, "I don't know. I'm just repeating the words of my spiritual master. I'm repeating the words of Krishna himself. We are just humble representatives. We don't claim to know everything. We are humble students, but the answers are there in the Shastras. Everything's there. There's authoritative scriptures. And we are humble students. We just simply repeat what we have heard from our spiritual master, and we are convinced that this is the absolute truth. And we don't claim to know. We are insignificant living entities. The only hope we have to receive Divya Jnana from our spiritual master. And that Divya Jnana is basically to know everything. Because when you know Krishna, you know everything. But of course, it's difficult to convince someone like that, because they don't have that faith or knowledge or realization. So we just humble. We preach in a humble state of mind, but confidently. Because we have the conviction. We have the conviction. There's vast scriptures. The Vedas are very vast. It explains everything but everything. So many arts and sciences. It's not just some sort of a vague philosophy. It's a very particular philosophy, and always pointing towards the Supreme Creator, the engineer, Krishna himself. So when you're preaching, obviously you have to also know whom you're dealing with, because if you want to preach to a scientist, you may have to speak in a scientific language. Don't even try, because we're not so-called scientists. We simply just repeat the words of Krishna, and that's what Srila Prabhupada did. Simply refer to his spiritual master, and he speak with purity. Purity is the force, because people sense that we have the conviction, we have the confidence. We study Prabhupada's books. First of all, we have to be convinced. And then we can convince others. We can touch people's lives. We can purify them. It depends on the individual adhikari. More advanced we are, the more we can touch people's lives. And that's why you can see, if you study Prabhupada's room conversations or morning walks, and scientists coming to see Prabhupada, even in Melbourne, Perth, and Prabhupada was visited by some scientists, or even government department heads coming to see Prabhupada. Because Prabhupada was so attractive, and people just wanted to see him, talk to him, and get into some kind of a philosophical debate. And Prabhupada was his purity and his conviction. He didn't claim to be a scientist and talk about nuclear physics or biology, no, just simply repeating the words, the the injunctions and the conclusions of the Shastras, the Vedanta conclusions. So Prabhupada, with conviction and his purity, and of course being empowered Mahabhagavata, great personality, who was not coming down to ordinary platform. He was simply speaking on the behalf of the Shastras, authoritative, and he had the conviction, he had the purity, he had the vision, so he could touch people's lives. That's how people got affected by even great scientists. Prabhupada defeated all of them, basically, all of them. They at least made them humble. And great physicists used to come see Prabhupada in Chicago, New York, wherever. He really loved dealing with the scientists because he knew that this is the problem here. Atheistic science, atheistic propaganda. So he was not against the scientists themselves. He was just against the atheistic propaganda. And their motive, obviously, real science is to understand who Krishna is and support that claim, who God is, how his creation takes place, just like Naradaji, trying to understand how the creation takes place, inquiring from Brahmaji. And that's called real science. You're trying to analyze it. But if you're trying to defy the Supreme, then it's a false science. It's not real science. Although the method is so-called scientific, experimental. No, real science means to understand who God is and the basic questions we are after. And how his creation takes place, all details. See how Prakriti, Mother Nature, the forces, the elements, and how everything takes place. How the universes take place. Higher, middle, lower planetary systems. And of course, a devotee always wants to know the purpose of this. Why we study this, why we're interested in material. Only a devotee can understand the objective of this creation. The scientist is trying to analyze the mechanics. Just like if you're an engineer who don't know the objective of this building, you're just analyzing the mechanics, see, the engineering principles or the structure or whatever. But a real knowledgeable person knows that there is a purpose here. So similarly, scientists, they are confused. They're just not honest about it. That's why they're having debate among themselves. And some go to the extreme of complete atheism, some go between, and some touching the truth a bit, they become quantum physicists. Quantum physics is more like an impersonal way of understanding who Krishna is, impersonalist, in a garb of scientists. So, but actually, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, that no one can understand me in truth. Only a devotee who has devotion, Krishna is prepared to reveal. Otherwise we cannot. So sometimes we're dealing with people, and obviously we don't want to be egoistic when we are preaching. We don't want to say we know everything. No, we refer to the authority. We refer to the authority. And that is our confidence. Prabhupada is perfect. He has perfect knowledge. So we have to have that initial, I would say, faith in our spiritual master. We have to have that. Therefore, the Srimad Bhagavatam and some Puranas also state that those who have sufficient, who has implicit faith in the words and instructions of the spiritual master and Krishna himself, the Lord is revealing the very essence. He gives you the simplicity and the purity of that devotion. He understands who you are. We have to have that faith, and Krishna will reveal himself. And then you preach with purity. You have the conviction, you have the insight. Otherwise, very difficult. Just having an intellectual theorization or book knowledge of the scripture, that's not enough. We have to have the purity behind. We have to have the Shakti, basically, the Guru Shakti. So we have to get the blessings. Therefore, devotees who follow the instructions of the spiritual master very carefully, making sure that Srila Prabhupada is pleased and our spiritual master is pleased, then Krishna will be inclined to help us when we are preaching. He will empower you. He gives you the intelligence what to say. And you can defeat anyone if you have the purity. You don't have to be a so-called scientist or whatever. We just defeat them with purity. But of course, if you happen to be a scientist, we have several scientists within the movement who are very intelligent, mathematics, physics, or whatever. They can take that debate also in more intellectual, academic, scientific language. They can have a debate on that. And there are many highly scholarly Vaishnavas who are willing to take up that debate and write publications. And they are the ones who get invited for conferences, scientific conferences. But us ordinary devotees, we simply take shelter of Prabhupada's teachings, the Vaishnava acharyas, and practice devotion sincerely, and Krishna will empower us. So when we preach to whoever, whether it's so-called scientists or whoever, we just simply speak from the heart what we understood from Prabhupada's books and refer to the Shastras. So obviously we refer to the authority, Krishna himself. And more convinced we are, the more impact we have on those individual jivas, whoever they are, whatever is the external disposition. Because ultimately they are all, like I said, they're confused. They're just not honest about it. No one has I dare to say, no one has the answer for the ultimate creation. They are all theories. And they admit, all scientific claims, 80%, I would say, 70 to 80% of the scientific claims based on theories. Constantly changing, constantly debated. That is why there's a whole confusion about Darwin evolution theory too, because even the scientists are Darwinists. Therefore we come as preachers and we present the Vaishnava Siddhanta as it is written in Srila Prabhupada's books. And of course we have to have the desire to help people. We have to have the compassion. So if we have that purity, compassion and dedication to our spiritual master, then we will be effective. And this is when Krishna, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very pleased. This is when you get the empowerment. In Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Kaviraj Goswami says, no one can preach Krishna consciousness without being empowered by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the one who empowers us. So nice if you can pray to Guru and Gauranga to give us the ability and the strength and the purity to convince others about the Vaishnava philosophy. Convince them for their benefit. We want them to be happy. We feel compassion for them. We're not here to convince people for showing that we know everything. No, that's not. The way is to repeat the words of the authority. And this is when we are satisfied also, because we're not changing things. We are just simply relying on the authority, the purity of Srila Prabhupada. Is it okay, Prabhupada? Hare Krishna. Thank you, Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Rantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.